I wanted to talk about March Madness really quickly because the tournament is coming up, and I have been thinking a lot about what to make of this college basketball season. Duke just got eliminated from potentially being in the NCAA tournament. Duke had one of the worst years in 25 years since basically since Coach Krzyzewski has been a coach at Duke. They had one of their worst seasons. Curiously enough, they got a lot better when Jalen Johnson opted out of the rest of the season, so I think that probably heavily decreases Jalen Johnson's draft stock. And I think that says more about the rest of the Duke basketball team as opposed to the talent of Jalen Johnson in that situation. But Duke is out of the tournament. Kentucky's having a horrible season. North Carolina has had an inconsistent season. And now it was announced this morning that Virginia, which was probably going to be one of the top seeds in the NCAA tournament, either a 2 seed or a 3 seed, they are now out of the NCAA tournament due to a COVID test. And to be clear, Duke had to basically win the ACC tournament to get into the NCAA tournament anyways, but their season was ended due to COVID as well. What to make of this NCAA basketball tournament and what to make of the season as a whole? All of these power players are being pulled from the tournament, and sure, it's just 2 teams so far, but what if there's more? Should we put an asterisk on this season? And what is happening to all these powerful football teams? What is happening to all these powerful basketball teams? All of these teams that are perennially just so good and so just constantly favorites, whether it's Michigan State, whether it's Kentucky, whether it's Duke, whether it's North Carolina. Those names are always in the conversation for being the best team in the country. Why are those teams struggling so much? And should we put an asterisk on this NCAA tournament, considering that, so many teams are going to be having COVID issues? Is this a title that eventually the winner of it, or is it one that they're going to really want to push over their heads? Those are all like hypothetical questions that I've been asking as I've been trying to grapple with what to make of this college basketball season. And really, my solution and my thought, especially when it comes to the teams that are supposed to be perennially just god-tier teams that are now struggling so heavily, and the question is always why. And I was doing an interview with a linebacker on the beat of the university that I cover, and he was recovering from a torn ACL injury. And during the conversation, I'm not going to say who it is. During that conversation, we were talking a lot about rehabbing in a COVID world in which coronavirus is changing how often people can stay with each other. It's changing how people can work out with each other. It changes a lot, especially in the world of a student athlete. So him and I were having this conversation, and I asked him, how he thought it would affect, the training and everything and the morale of the team. And he gave me a really interesting answer. And he said to me, and this is paraphrasing, he said, to me, I see this as an opportunity to prove how hard I can work and see the people around me who choose to work and who choose to not work. And by work, we mean work on their game, work out. Who is invested in working on themselves, essentially was his response. He said, you're really going to see who is there to work hard and to win, and who is just there for themselves. And that answer is something that I was thinking a lot about when I was quantifying what to make of this basketball season. Why are all of these teams, like Kentucky, Michigan State, Duke, North Carolina, why are all of these teams struggling so much? And maybe this is a little bit of a logical leap, but I've talked about it on the show before. College basketball, in many ways, is just a pit stop to the NBA, especially if you're playing for one of these big schools. And it's very much a situation in which you might have great camaraderie with your teammates, you might have a good relationship with your teammates, but the chance is very real, and maybe some of you can see where I'm going with this, the chance is very real that the players are just specifically using those teams and those schools as a pit stop before they're going to the NBA, because they can't just go straight to the NBA from high school. And therefore, the conclusion of, based on, what the linebacker told me, it's like, we'll see who is there to work and improve their game and who's just there from themselves. I wonder what the percentage of players at these high caliber schools are only there for themselves and are not there to win. And therefore, that is why these teams are doing so poorly. Because their mind is not on winning now. Their mind is not winning with this school. Their mind is on the NBA. And I take a look at Duke, and it kind of, maybe it's a little bit of confirmation bias, but it kind of proves my point. Jalen Johnson is supposed to be a lottery pick in this NBA draft, this upcoming NBA draft. He was playing okay, but Duke as a basketball team was playing horribly. They looked uninspired. They looked lost offensively. They looked nothing like the Duke basketball that we're accustomed to as basketball fans. As soon as the NBA prospect, Jalen Johnson, opted out and left his team, Duke instantly got better. And I would argue that if Jalen Johnson didn't play at all this season, Duke might be in the NCAA tournament. So to see that, and to kind of remember what this linebacker told me in that interview that I had with him, I can make the logical conclusion that for these schools specifically, as opposed to a school like Gonzaga, which Gonzaga is obviously a gigantic part of the Big East, and it's a big name school for sure, but it's never quite had the prowess that some of these ACC and SEC schools have had, especially recently. Teams like Gonzaga, Villanova, those kids want to play and they want to play to win. So it makes sense why a team like Gonzaga is absolutely dominating in the NCAA right now. And sure, they've had an easier schedule, but that be what it may. With the COVID health and safety protocol, with all the extra things going around, with how tight practices, with how you're not always going to have people there, the best teams in the NCAA are the teams that are working the hardest and have the most chemistry together and are all about winning together and winning now for that school. As opposed to the situation at Duke where Jalen Johnson was very clearly all about his future in the NBA, and as soon as he opted out, the Duke Blue Devils got much, much better. And I take a look around the rest of the NCAA, and I take a look at teams like Kentucky. I take a look at teams like Michigan State, teams like North Carolina, who should be perennial 1 seeds in the NCAA tournament, at the very least 1 or 2 seeds, struggling like this. And I just take a look and I say, you know what the problem is? They just don't care. Now, I'm not saying that they don't care. Obviously, the coaches and the players care, but the difference makers that are in place are more concerned with their future in the NBA than they are concerned with the success of the team during that moment. So they're not going to work as hard. They're not going to practice as hard for the team. They're going to do all of that for themselves. Because again, they can't go to the NBA straight from high school. They have to go to college, and college is nothing but a glorified pit stop. I hope that all of that makes sense. I kind of had to work out how I wanted to word that. But for fans of college basketball, what do you think about that? Do you think I'm right? Do you think I'm disastrously wrong? I'm very interested to hear and listen and read some of your reactions to that. This has been a wild college basketball season, and with Virginia and Duke being out of the tournament now, do we put an asterisk on whoever wins the entire thing? What context do we see this season? And that's my take on why some of these really good teams are having statistically one of their worst seasons in the last 25 to 30 years. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching this segment from the Hard Headed Sports Podcast. You've heard what I've had to say, now I'm interested to hear what you think as well. If you enjoyed this highlight from the show and want to watch more highlights from the show as they come out after the show's completion, you should definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel, and if you're interested in listening to the entire show in its full-length entirety, you should follow the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Anchor. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all very soon.